And as we near the end of the school year, we're checking in with local leaders on how districts are continuing to fight the coronavirus pandemic. We're joined now by Columbia Public Schools Superintendent Dr. Peter Stiepleman. And Doctor, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Now we're coming up on the end of the school year, and usually this would mean end of the school year parties. Of course, that's looking a lot different. How are operations wrapping up so far at CPS?
Yeah, you're right. So this is our last week of school. It ends on the 21st, although I would imagine many families would see this week as no different from any other previous week, because we've been all working from home and trying our best to kind of understand this new normal. And then this weekend coming up is supposed to be our graduations. And so it's a really tough week ahead of us because of the fact that school's supposed to end. You know, this is the week where you have your field days and your end of the year activities, and then it culminates with graduation and a senior all-night party, and that's not happening this year. And so that's really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen a lot of communities coming together. I think there was a drive-by graduation held in a neighborhood here in Columbia. Have you seen anything like that also happening with CPS?
Yeah, I've seen things like that. I think communities in themselves are trying to balance the health department's order of no mass gatherings of more than 10, and so using cars as a way to maintain that social distancing and trying to find ways to honor their children and our community, because no doubt this is a really hard week for our kids who are trying to think through, you know, this is sort of that culminating week where they cross the stage and become adults, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think lots of families and communities are trying to figure out how to sort of do that in their own way. So
yeah.
Sort of create that same experience.
Absolutely. How about students and teachers getting their items out of their buildings? I know last time we talked, that process was just getting started. How has that gone?
It's been going really well because of the fact that the month of May is the last month for teacher contracts as well. And so this is our month of trying to make sure that teachers are able to get their things. And as we move from, teachers who are moving from building to building or classroom to classroom, as well as for children to be able to come back and get their things. And so I can speak as a parent of 3 children in the public schools that our principals have been communicating with us about the day that we're supposed to come in and grab our things, or the music teachers who want them to come grab their things out of their lockers. And so we're now turning our attention from closing out this school year towards what does preparations for the next school year look like.
Absolutely, and I want to touch on that. We're going to get to you coming up in just about 20 minutes. We're going to talk about next school year, because I know that's what a lot of CPS families have their eyes set on now, is what will my students' school year look like next year? So we're going to get to that coming up in just a few minutes.
As your teaser.
Yes, absolutely. You stole it from me. All right, thanks for being on with us. We'll be back. We're joined now live by Columbia Public Schools Superintendent Dr. Peter Stiepleman, and thank you so much for being on with us this morning.
Good morning.
And we know a lot of CPS families have their eyes set on next year. We've heard of 3 scenarios for next school year. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to note that, as you mentioned before, there's no vaccine, there is no large-scale antibody test. What we know is that it's not going away. And what we do also know is that the best tool to combat COVID is social distancing. And so as we think about the next school year, and as we've been working as a team, and this week we'll be engaging our teachers to ask them for their feedback before then going to the full community to ask them for their feedback, as well as these 3 scenarios. So one scenario is a traditional opening, as if we were back as we would typically have been, and have our Meet the Teacher nights in August and start our school year. But we also know that's increasingly unlikely. You mentioned that there were 4 new cases this weekend. As the community begins to open up more and begin to be with each other more, I think we can expect to see an increase. But we'll look to our local health department to guide us on that. I'm not an epidemiologist, and so we'll use them as our guidance for this work. So traditional, and then hybrid, which is trying to do some face-to-face, bringing kids into school, because we know that routines are super important, and we also know that being in school helps sort of restart that economy. And so we know that families rely on us to have children in school so that they can go to work. And then the third is a completely online system or a remote learning type of a scenario, because we also recognize that it may be that we have to go right back to where we were in the spring, and that while our community has been incredibly gracious about how we closed school and went to an online platform, we weren't really doing online. And so this week in particular, we're putting some final touches on what that training might look like for teachers, so that if we were to have to go back to an online platform, that we can do it even better than what we did this spring.
Okay, so those three scenarios, rather, when could we hear a final decision on that? For a lack of a better term, could it be a game time decision?
Yeah, so if you look at the University of Missouri, they've given a timeline of, I think, July 15th to make some decisions about what the fall will look like. I know that Columbia College and Stevens are making similar decisions. Central Methodist is making similar decisions. And so you can expect that by the end of June, early July, you'll start to hear a little bit more of a final decision. What's really important for us to note is just to see what stage we're in. Right now, we're in a no more than 10 in terms of mass gatherings, and then it moves to 50, and then it moves to 100, and then it's supposed to move to 250. Well, if we're still at 250 in August, that certainly has dramatic implications for what schools might look like in the fall. And if we find ourselves at 100 or 50, boy, that's going to be even more difficult to accommodate. So we're going to work hand in hand with the health department. We meet with them regularly to sort of talk through our scenarios and our models, and we hope to have some better decisions as early in the summer as we possibly can, but certainly the beginning of July.
Okay, we look forward to hearing what those are. Dr. Stiepleman, thank you so much for being on with us this morning. We'll check back in with you coming up in about 15 minutes. Thanks for your time.
Perfect, thank you.
We're joined now by Columbia Public Schools Superintendent Dr. Peter Stiepleman. And Dr. Stiepleman, at the start of this newscast, we talked about those three scenarios for the next school year. That was hybrid, online, and traditional. How will hybrid work for parents who are both working, and are there any plans for daycare at this time?
Yeah, that is a really important question that you're asking, and one that we're trying to figure out. It's true that a hybrid scenario would have children coming for part of the week and also not being at school for part of the week. And so looking at what childcare might look like for families is certainly one of the things that we're trying to figure out.